This is Served with me, Andy Roddick. Please hit subscribe. We drop new episodes every week. All right, everyone, welcome back to Served. We talked to a lot of really fun people. I am excited about this interview. Jason Hehir is joining us stateside. You've all watched The Last Dance. You've all seen why it did and should have won Emmys. One of the best sports documentaries I've ever seen. I watched his documentary on Andre the Giant. I thought it was fascinating. He's done a million 30 for 30s, the Fab Five, 85 Bears, HBO 24/7, and now is the director of Novak Djokovic, Wolf and Winner, which is out this Thursday, August 20th on Amazon Prime Video. Jason, welcome to Serve. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's like to be here.
So I'm pumped for this documentary specifically. We were talking off air just now, and as we kind of do when we come and write down our notes at the beginning, but most times when you see someone who's doing a documentary, you generally know where it's going, what you might see. You kind of know the ending a lot of the times and what it is. This was like a real life, living, breathing thing with someone who is complex. Can you walk us through what your attraction was to this and what we might not know from having kind of been on the outside of this?
Well, the attraction was twofold. One was that he's a fascinating guy. He's a polarizing guy. He's an opinionated guy. He's at times obstinate, stubborn. We all know the reputation, the legend of Novak Djokovic off the court and just kind of who he is. So I was really interested in digging into that. But second, we have a GOAT, if I can call him that, if we can agree, at least statistically, he's the GOAT. We have an active GOAT who's still dominant over just about everybody in tennis, except for a couple of guys who on any given day, he's proven he can beat. So it was a unique opportunity to not profile a GOAT like a Jordan or a Brady or something like that retrospectively, to actually have them in real time as they're still playing the game that they are the best ever at. And I was interested to see how he's grappling with when he should hang it up. Because as you guys know, I think, Andy, you were the one who said that anyone who asked him about retirement after the Alcaraz match should be fired. Or maybe it was after he beat Sinner. But I agree with you, and no one agrees with you more than Novak does. But it was a unique opportunity to have a real-time look at someone as they were grappling with what could be the end of their career.
It was interesting to me because obviously with Michael Jordan, we all know him from a million angles, being the greatest of all time, being probably the biggest pop culture superstar that sports has ever seen in that moment, but it's a retrospective. Novak dealing with things in real time, he has his accomplishments, and yet in the moments of being vulnerable and maybe insecure in a given moment or his body not responding, those accomplishments almost get put on the side for athletes and you're kind of purely focused on what's ahead of you. Was that the biggest difference between covering Novak in real time versus doing kind of a retrospective through Jordan's eyes?
Yeah, because they can, Jordan knew how his story on the basketball court ended, at least with the Bulls and with the Wizards, which we didn't get into. But Novak doesn't know how this is going to end. I don't think any of us do. And if you told me that Novak's going to be playing when he's 50, I would believe you. He's going to be playing until he feels like he can't or doesn't want to anymore, or his body just betrays him. But, he's my favorite moments in the movie are the most human moments for him. I asked him after he beat Alcaraz in 25 in Melbourne, what was more difficult for him at this stage of his career, the mental or the physical aspect? And he said the mental. He said, you would expect me to say the physical because, my body's not responding the way it used to, and there's more recovery time needed. But he said the mental is more excruciating and exhausting.
Say more about, I was going to ask you to show off your Serbo-Croatian. Define the word enot for us, and then compare the enot of Jordan versus Novak.
It's a very Serbian notion, although it shares a lot with Michael's DNA as well. It's just stubbornness and doing something because someone told you that you can't do it. And culturally, it's very much embedded with them as a people. And with Novak especially, he and the parallels between him and Jordan are really uncanny. Down to the fact that late in their careers, both of them, they have to conjure these enemies or these challenges or these doubters. I remember asking Michael if he was watching the playoffs. I was interviewing him, and it was May of that year, so the playoffs were on. And I said, "Are you watching every night?" And he said, "Of course." And I said, "What do you miss the most about it?" And I barely got the sentence out of my mouth, and he said, "Proving people wrong." Mm-hmm. Now, there's no one on earth who needs to prove people wrong less than Michael Jordan, but that is what drove him. It's like it's a blessing and a curse for these guys, because imagine being that good and still feeling like indignant or feeling that enot that you every time you step on the court. So he would make things up about his opponents. This is Michael, and I bet that Novak does it too. We have a section in there where there's one guy who's Jim Courier told the story of. There's one guy at center court at Wimbledon who had said something untoward about him. And the rest of the match, he just had his eyes on this guy. And when he match, he stared at this dude all the way to walking to the net and didn't even look at his team. He was just looking at this one guy. So that enots and their similarities were striking.
It's, you're a good storyteller, Jason, when you just rip through the next 4 questions that I had written down specifically to being able to pick someone out of an audience. But I am kind of obsessed with the notion, whether it's Jordan or Novak. Novak can almost take, and this was what I had written down even before your last explanation, he can almost find someone who may not even be cheering against him, might be cheering for an opponent, find that motherfucker, and he will use that person as an energy source. Like, not even just a chip on my shoulder, I need to create something, but he will like draw that. He's like Voldemort. He will draw that person's energy and turn himself into like this superhero type figure. Is that comparable with MJ and Novak? And who do you think kind of operates the more extreme version of that?
It's tough to say who's more extreme, because I think they're both a 10 out of 10 when it comes to that. Yeah. And I don't think they'd be who they are without that facet of their personality, which is that let's call it enot, now that we know the word, combined with, and the two of them share this, and I haven't dealt with Brady at all, but I would imagine that it's the exact same thing with Brady, because I have heard him talk about being in pregame warmups and looking down the opposite end of the field, and just a guy makes eye contact with him, and it's like, what are you fucking looking at me? Like, he'll make something up to piss himself off. So they have that, and then they have, this is with Michael and Novak at the very least, a presence of a mindfulness about them where they're living in the moment. A lot of greats in music and entertainment and sports that I've dealt with don't like to look backwards. You have to drag it out of them to look back, and they'll never talk about the future. They talk about the now. With Jordan, It was like, when's the next interview? When are we going to do this next? I said, I'll contact you next week and we'll see. No. Like, doesn't want to think about what he's doing tomorrow, the next day. It's the right now. I mean, he said himself, Michael, why would I think about missing a shot as I'm taking it? Like, how does that serve me in my number one goal, which is to vanquish every opponent that I have across from me? Novak's the same way. You saw it in the film. He's down 40-15, 5-3 in the fifth set, or 40-15, 5-3 to Roger at the US Open, and he has that return. Like, he's not thinking what's going to happen if I miss this. Now he's at 40-30, and he's going to think about that. So mindfulness, presence of mind, and that stubbornness and conjuring any sort of motivation they can get. It's really, the Venn diagram is like a circle with those two.
Was it like Ballmer's peak of that kind of chip on your shoulder thing, where he's coming up through this fandom that Roger and Rafa have created, and he's the guy trying to break up the Beatles? Was that moment specifically like available to someone with not only his skill set, which we can't undersell because he's the most flexible, Gumby, and it's not an accident because he's committed his entire life to it, but was that moment to kind of break up that monopoly, for lack of a better term? Would it have taken someone, specifically Novak, to kind of break up that monopoly with Roger and Rafa, not only in the tennis, but with kind of the fandom?
Yeah, I think you ticked every box there of how unlikely it would be to actually break that apart and to eclipse them. But you add another element into it, which is cultural. These guys, Roger and Rafa, and tennis itself is the very first world regal, dignified sport. The guys look like they could be in an action movie. They look like movie stars. Not that Novak's a bad-looking guy, but he comes from Serbia. He has a name that people had trouble pronouncing. He speaks a language that people can barely recognize. And Serbia at the time was kind of vilified because people equated Serbia with Milosevic, and he was a war criminal, and Serbians were looked at a little bit sideways. And Novak knew that, and that drove him as well. So as he says in the doc, table for three, please. I think it was fun for him. Right. And there's a moment early in his career when he's at a presser, I think it was in Roland Garros, and he said that Rafa was beatable. And who was it coming out of it? I forget who it was. A talking head at ESPN. Brad Gilbert, I believe. More than a talking head at ESPN, I recognize. But he said,
by the way, I'm going to clip that and send it to Brad. You just literally early Christmas gift. I cannot believe that you just gave me that. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for everything you did. Thank you for your documentary, and thank you for that soundbite.
Dude, no need to tiptoe here, Jason.
Noted pundit Brad Gilbert said,
good recovery.
He said, "Are you crazy, Djokovic? Do you need some smelling salts? Do you know what you just did? I think the next time that you face Rafa, he's going to take you out to the woodshed." But he enjoyed this. He was known as the Joker. He did all the impressions and all of that. But then he had this switch that he could flip. And, I think at one point we have a graphic that's like he had one major, and I think the other two guys were at like 14-12 or 14-13. So the odds of him ever vanquishing them in a major sense were, it was 1,000,000 to 1. But then he just goes on this tear for the next, after 2010, really just goes on this tear once he got his body right.
Can I I'll don't be modest. I'll do it for you. Novak specifically asked for you. He saw The Last Dance. He found it inspirational, and he specifically wanted to work with you. What did you know about him going into this?
Very little. I knew what the average big sports fan knows. I was not a tennis junkie. I watched the majors. Candidly, most recently at that point, I knew of him from the deportation scandal and the vaccine stuff, which I disagreed with him on and still do. So I didn't have that favorable an image of him in my head because that was still kind of in the news. When you brought up Novak, you brought that up, and that's going to follow him around for a while, obviously. We deal with that for a while in the documentary as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, we won't go too spoilery, but he does not shy from that.
No.
And one thing he told me last month, you know this better than anyone, but we sort of had a bit of a pivot with documentaries, right? Where there used to be sort of this independence. It was like writing a biography, and now the subject often has some sort of input. What was he like, not just as a subject, but as a collaborator? Because I was really impressed. This is not just a love letter. You get a sense of some of the controversy. He clearly signed off on some of this. And I was really impressed that he was willing to talk about some of the less triumphant, less flattering aspects of his career. I thought that really spoke well of both of you.
I give these guys, anyone who's willing to do that, enormous credit, because if he wanted to, he could have found a director and said, This is the way I want to tell this. You take but you're doing this. You're not going to include this. There were things that, he had a million notes always, but and some of those battles he won and some of those battles he didn't win. This went on for like a year. Last year, I thought we were done last summer with the film. And for the last 12 months, it was dinners and Zoom calls. But he's very, very engaged. This is not a guy who's like, oh, his team said he doesn't like that shot, take that out. He was the one on these Zoom calls. He was the one WhatsApp messaging me with little tiny notes, artistic, like aesthetic ones too. And he was very curious from the very, very beginning about how these things are made. He's, as you guys know, a very curious guy, a deeply intelligent guy, speaks like 6 or 7 languages, and just one of the most thoughtful interviewees I've ever dealt with. But he wanted to know how. So when you start this out, what do you do? Do you read books? How do you decide who you're interviewing? How do you decide how long it's going to be? He had questions that I couldn't even answer, and kind of considered to myself, like, I've never even thought about that aspect of how we go about making these things. So very involved. But that's better than someone who doesn't care at all. Yeah, so it was challenging at times because he is so exacting, and so, he wants to win everything. So he's going to win this notes call. He's going to win this argument about what should go in and what shouldn't go in. But ultimately, I think we got to a place where all of us are really proud of it.
Jason, you mentioned that you weren't. I don't want to say you weren't a tennis person, but you weren't following who wins the 250 in October in Lisbon, wherever we are.
Didn't even know what that was.
Yeah.
When you say 250, I just learned that. So.
Same. But I thought this quote, one at the first 5 minutes out of the gate, contrasting like that goofy side of Novak, because I think the thing that's challenging, listen, I played Novak 9 times. We got along 99.5% of all of our interactions the entire time, and then we had like an ugly 5 minutes one time. That was it. And that seems to have dictated like the narrative around our relationship. But I genuinely really, really enjoy being around Novak. I think Yelena's a triumph. Like, I think she's fantastic, and I think she's great in the documentary.
She's the MVP of the doc.
She's unbelievable.
Novak's wife.
Novak, she's unbelievable in the doc. But the two things that kind of made me lean in, right, where I'm like leaning on my elbows and like I want more of this, was how you kind of juxtaposed that silly side of Novak and showing it, and then showing where he comes from in war-torn Serbia. And early in the doc, Jelena says, listen, there weren't a lot of kids that were able to go outside and just play. And that that landed with me. I'm like, fuck, I knew it, and like I know where he's from and I know the history of it, but her saying it that simply really landed with me. And then this quote knocked me on my ass where I just wanted more of it. He goes, outside of the tennis court has to be in service to the tennis. And then he paused and he says, and that has consequences. Like, how do you pick and choose the moments, especially early on in a documentary, that make people that, like, I know a lot about Novak. I have to cover him. I played against him. I'm going, oh yeah, let's get in on this. We're about to eat.
That's the goal. I mean, that's you said it right there. I mean, that makes me that's so gratifying to me, because he said that during that interview.
Yeah. And
immediately I'm like, that's the end of the cold open right there.
Okay.
Now we're cutting to the opening credits, and now we're going, because the rest of the movie is an investigation, a search for what are the consequences. I'm always fascinated by the pursuit of greatness and the price of that pursuit. And this guy is living it now he's a happy guy. There was a lot of criticism or, commentary that I heard after the Last Dance. People said that, Michael seems like he's such an unhappy guy. And what is it like to live that competitively your whole life? First of all, I don't think Michael's unhappy. I don't deal with him on a day-to-day basis, but he's got $3 billion in the bank. He plays a lot of golf and he smokes cigars. It sounds like a pretty happy life.
So your opinion is that Michael Jordan's just fine.
Yeah, right. As a billionaire who plays golf, he's doing okay.
And Novak is grappling with a lot of that stuff. But as we said before in this doc, we're witnessing it in real time. So these consequences for him are his kids are now approaching the age that he was when there were bombs dropping on his apartment building in Belgrade. And as you pointed out, Jelena saying that kids didn't have a lot of chances to play too much back then. And now he can afford his kids these opportunities that he didn't have to spend time. His dad was out hustling, working half a dozen jobs and getting money from really dangerous people, loan sharks, in order to fund Novak's career. So he didn't have close to the childhood that his kids have now, but he's still on the road as much as a pro tennis player is on the road, maybe half the year or whatever it is, depending on how many tournaments he plays. So there's a scene where he's playing tennis with his son in the backyard of a rental house in Melbourne that might be my favorite scene in the whole doc, because it's impossible to fake the affection that these kids have for him. And that immediately, that was imprinted on me. The first day that we shot was in Montenegro, and he was on the practice court. Excuse me. He was on the practice court, and his daughter came from the beach with her mom and surprised him on the practice court. Nobody, including Novak, knew that she was coming. The cameras were there. She went right past the cameras and sat in her dad's lap and put this little pink bucket hat on his head. And it was so obvious how much she adored her dad in that moment this is my first day meeting him, working with him, and I'm thinking, all right, how much of a stubborn monster could this guy possibly be if this little girl feels this way about him? He has earned this somehow. So let's investigate that a little bit more and use that as a layer of the onion we can peel back and try and see the dad Novak rather than just the tennis player.
Can I do a nerdy process question, which is knuckleheads on podcasts love to speculate about what is Novak? Does he still have another major in him? And fans talk about this and social media lights up. You're making a film, and in the late January, he's 2 sets away from winning the Australian Open and beating Carlos Alcaraz. To me, that would have huge consequences on structure, on tone, on... How are you living the fact that this is and I mean, and also his relationship with Serbia is very much a fluid situation. I mean, there's a lot going on in real time. As a filmmaker, how are you confronting the fact that, he was 2 sets away from winning his 25th major 6 months ago? How are you watching matches? How are you thinking about structure when the story is still being written?
I have an affection for him because I would call him a friend now. So I want him to win because I want my friend to accomplish something that is deeply meaningful to him. I can't say that at the same time I'm not thinking, oh God, what do we can't just like put a little footnote at the end and say, and by the way, so we kind of white knuckled it through. We started shooting this doc. This project has taken me longer than The Last Dance took me. This project is 92 minutes long. The Last Dance was 10 hours. And this project took me longer from start to finish than The Last Dance did. So that's a part of the reason for that, is that the story was so fluid. We had to keep bailing out and following a new story. So when they first approached me with this, it was the 23 US Open, which he won. We didn't get down to like signing contracts and getting down to business until 24. The first tournament we shot with him at was the 24 US Open. We couldn't have predicted that he was going to have the knee injury at Wimbledon that year, that he was going to win gold over Alcaraz a month later. He was exhausted when he got to the US Open. Mm-hmm. So then we had to, because that was supposed to be the spine of the doc.
Whoops.
And he's bounced like 4 days in. So that was that. And he just went radio silent for like a month.
No shit.
Yeah. I mean, with me at least. And his team told me this is what he does. I mean, he's so gracious on the court that it looks to me as an outsider like, oh, he doesn't really think, maybe he's been through this so many times the losses don't really affect him that much. He shuts down. This is according to Yelena and according to his team.
Are you worried at that point? Are you like, do we actually have a document? Like when he's icing you out, even if people are saying like, he'll be back, this is normal, are you just like, are you freaking out?
Not, because we have really good partners in Amazon. I'm saying to Amazon, like, hey, as long as you guys are patient,
okay, then
I can wait. I'll wait 10 years if he doesn't come back up for air. Like I have other things to do. So, but he did, and that's when we shot. Oh, I know what happened. He hired Andy Murray.
Oh, that guy.
Oh, that guy. The fourth one.
We were like, what? Like, how do you drop that? So then the movie became Novak Djokovic hiring Andy Murray 6 weeks in the life of the first 6 weeks of their relationship, starting in December, going through the Australian Open, and let this be the lens that we examine his life with. And did he hire Andy because he wants a little intel about what it's like on the other side? As we're making that movie, he and Andy part ways. And by the way, he's making it to the finals, the semis and the finals of, I think, did he make at least the semis?
Yes.
Yes.
I think in the last 7, I mean, he hasn't made the semis in one time in the last whatever.
Right. But luckily what happened was that the thesis that we had at the end, I mean, no, spoiler alert, but he retires against Zverev in the semis at Australia, gets booed off the court. Mm-hmm. And it was actually a mistake that I made sitting in this chair editing one time. I put the wrong music underneath the closing few minutes, because it was supposed to be like this poignant, like, this is the cost, this is the consequence of carrying this much, and you still get booed after 24 majors and blah, blah, blah. There's this song that came on that was more like a kick-ass run-through-a-wall song from our score, which is my favorite part of the whole movie is the music. The Lucia Micarelli and Eric Byers, husband and wife team, they knocked this out of the park, the music for this thing. So I put that underneath, and all of a sudden it became like a defiant, like, I'm not stopping. Like, everyone wants to talk about retirement, I'm not going anywhere kind of thing. Like, and then he does a wolf howl at the end of the movie. And it's like, who knows when this thing's going to end? Sidebar, the reason that we called it The Wolf in Winter was originally called, first I pitched a doc to them called The Two Novaks. When they first contacted me, I wrote a treatment called The Two Novaks, which is about basically you can't be the best dad in the world and the best tennis player in the world at the same time. And how does this guy grapple with that? That evolved into, and it's still, I think, the story of the doc, but instead we called it The Wolf. I didn't even realize that was his nickname, or he liked to go by that, or people knew him as that. But then I thought, if we call it The Wolf, I'm expecting, if I see a doc that's someone's nickname, if it's Roger Clemens and it's called Rocket, I'm expecting the life story, definitive, comprehensive life story of Roger Clemens. And I didn't want to signal to the audience that that's what this is. I think that there's an instinct these days with the big athletes, especially, to automatically do a series if you're going to do a doc. And I'm a lot more interested these days in a moment in time, a moment in their life. And that could be a microcosm of them as a whole, but not doing 106 interviews like we did with Jordan. We did a fraction of that for this one. But this doc had been in production since 2017. I came on in 2024. So they had gone fits and starts and fits and starts. He dropped out. He came back on. He dropped out. Then COVID happened and everyone went silent. So we have dozens of interviews in our library, but we only conducted, I don't know, probably like 20.
Did you ever feel like the film was going to end with a retirement? Working on it this long, with how many starts and stops and different iterations?
Not genuinely. It would have made my life easier because it's a neat ending. But I don't. You guys know this too. I'm not breaking news here. If he were to win 25, he wouldn't quit. If he defends his gold medal in 28, I don't think he'll quit. If he wins a major at 40, I don't think he'll quit. I said to him, I think you're gonna play until you play with your son in doubles. And he said, against my son. So it's clearly on his mind. Now he was joking, but
I get your point. I'm going with Vegas offers a line. I'm taking the under. I just, it's like,
you're taking the under.
I'm taking I get what he's saying, and I like that he is that defiant, because why would he be anything less at this point? I am curious, but to your point, like I sit here and I've watched him for 2 decades now. The best, the worst, the controversies, the wins, the losses, and I have no idea if he's gonna walk away or if he's gonna get beat by, some plumber at some point and be like, this fucking sucks. Like, I don't know if he's gonna limp out or if it's gonna be something where it's this, Samprasian, type exit. I mean, and all this intel is fascinating to me.
A great quote. Howard Bryant, the writer, has a great quote in the doc, and says that there's 3 ways you go out. One is that your body betrays you. 2 is that your game betrays you, and the guys who couldn't beat you before, now you're losing the qualifiers. 3 is that you go out on top. And most people need that body betraying them to go. It's similar in boxers too, John. You've dealt a lot with boxers and UFC guys. I have as well. The tragic part of those athletes is that they need to get their head kicked in so many times that they can't do this anymore, and then that has long-term consequences. Luckily, with tennis, we're not talking about the same kind of CTE ramifications. But with Novak, like, he's not stepping aside for anybody. There's no passing of the torch. Like, this guy, you're going to have to take the torch from him. And if there was player X, let's just make up a fictional player, and he had the seasons that Novak had for the last 3 years, no one would be saying, hey, when are you going to retire?
Yeah, totally.
It's only because of his age. People are curious.
It's his age and it's his shadow. He's not like some plumber like the rest of us, where it's like, you made the semis of a slam. It's like, this is great. Like, round of applause for us. Like, it's everything at a certain point of greatness, you get judged against your own shadow constantly. And that's, for better or worse, but that's the lens with which we all view it. I mean, that's just it.
Well, he wanted us to take all mentions of retirement out of the doc because he's so sick of talking about it. Now, he said, just replace every time the word retirement is said with longevity. And I said, well, we can't say Novak. Everyone's talking about whether or not you're going to longevity. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. That's the longevity announcement.
Yeah. I try to tell him that it's a compliment that people are asking you about retirement, because they're not wanting you to go. They're just wondering how much you need to prove, how long you could possibly do this, because it defies logic that you're still performing at the level you're performing.
Yeah, I mean, he made the point to me. I'm paraphrasing this, but that this whole retirement is something else he can latch onto, in that Jordan create enemies and friction, and George Karl ordered a salad, so I took it personally. He's using all this retirement talk, even when half the retirement talk is incredibly flattering. Like, we hope you never retire. You mentioned the word retire. Let me ask you a quick question that one of the great mysteries of Novak Djokovic, right? So, some athletes are just sort of, they're limited, or they're knuckleheads. And this is a guy who's almost presidential. He speaks these languages. He's a wonderful father. I mean, we could do a whole episode on all of his virtues. And then there is that one lapse every once in a while, and he'll smack a ball that almost hits a fan, a few years after that caused his default from a tournament. And he'll whack the net at Wimbledon on center court. And there'll be these occasional lapses that are so counter to everything else he does, which is wonderful and admirable. Do you have any insight into those few lapses that are just, he knows better, he knows right from wrong, and you just, every few months or once a year, there's just a lapse. We talk about it on this, Andy and Mike and I. They're just these occasional lapses that are so at odds with everything he talks about and everything he projects. Is that something you have insight into or a theory on?
I don't have insight into it that's definitive. I mean, I think that there's so much passion just under the surface there that he doesn't have control of it at all times. And there are rare occasions where it boils over, and I know that he's immediately, when things like that happen, he's immediately apologetic and regrets it and is not proud of those lapses in behavior. It's two things really, though, that we're talking about. We're talking about kind of on-court tantrums, which are more rare now, I think, than they were earlier in his career.
Yeah, because we can't argue with lines people anymore.
The robots.
That's it.
Yeah, what would McEnroe have done?
If he would have found a way.
But then there's this stuff like the COVID thing, the vaccine thing, where he can't help himself. So we go deep into this. He posted on Instagram before he left for Australia that he was going over with a medical exemption, an athlete's exemption, which was that he had had COVID twice in the past 6 months, or some stipulation that they let him in because of that. And his wife, as we say in the doc, we tell this story. She says, I told him, don't put that in. And he said, I have to put this in. And she said, don't put that in. And he said, I should have, as always, my wife is right. I should have listened to her, because that, it's 24 hours to get over there. By the time he lands, that's the talk of the entire country and the talk of the entire sport is that, why are they letting this guy in? If he hadn't done that and called attention to himself, I don't think we're having this conversation, because I think they would have let him, but he had to do it. He can't help himself. And that's the ENOT. I don't think ENOT makes him smack the net at center court, but I do think the ENOT makes him speak when shutting his mouth might be the what do they say? Discretion is the better part of valor. He can't help himself in those instances. And that's the ENOT bubbling out of him.
Jason, I have one more question. And you mentioned Jelena being the star of the doc. You kind of said it in passing earlier in this interview. And then you mentioned her having an opinion that's counter to Novak on, some of the vaccine stuff and some of the bigger controversies. I've been around her in passing a bunch of times. She is so nice to be around. She is fantastic. And I also love that, like, early on in this doc, she's talking about Novak, and she mentioned like retirement. He's going to, he's not. He kind of, will throw something out there. And she said, well, Novak, he kind of plays this game. It seems like she is kind of eyes wide open when it comes to all things Novak.
Oh, yeah.
How happy were you?
First of all, I need to correct you, because she's she'll call you and correct you. I think that she agrees with him on the vaccine stuff.
No. I just meant on like the press release. Let's say I don't mean. Yeah, sorry.
It's the expression of things. Correct. It's saying too much that she disagrees with him. There's no one who loves that guy more on the planet than she does, and she's his fiercest protector. She protects him more fiercely than he protects himself, and it's beautiful to see. Like their relationship is aspirational in my observation of them. They're great together. But yeah, she said after he won the gold medal, his coach said, "I think this is it. Like there's nothing more to be done. This is over. Like he's got the most majors. Now he's got a gold medal. That was one of his long-term goals. Like this is it." And she said, "We'll see, but he does this a lot. He likes to play this game." I don't know if he's kind of impish and he does like to needle people and all that, but I don't know that I don't think he's deliberately dangling retirement in front of anybody. But he has to know that people are thinking, okay, this has to be it now, right? That's why I said before that, like, if he was to win 25 and win another gold medal and win one at 40 and then win doubles with his son, like, he's not going to stop unless his body doesn't let him get out of bed anymore because he loves the sport so deeply. And I don't think that it's because I went into it thinking that it's because he's afraid of what's on the other side. So many athletes, I don't know if you dealt with this, Andy, but especially in a sport like tennis, it's so disciplined and regimented and structured that, like, I'm sure athletes are afraid of, like, what do I do that first Monday morning when I'm not playing professionally anymore? What's on the other side of this? And we had sound bites in there because when he hired Andy, I figured, I've cracked the code. I figured out why he did this. It's because he wants to know from Andy. And he was like, bullshit. No, that's not why I did that. I think Andy's a great player and a great coach, and he knows my game better than anybody. But I am not afraid at all of what's on the other side. I have a million interests. I told Yellen that she's going to be a golf widow because he's going to be so addicted to the game of golf that she may see him less in retirement. But he was emphatic about the fact that he is not afraid of that lack of motivation or lack of purpose when he does retire.
Well, Jason, I appreciate you coming on Served. I've been a big fan of your work for a long time. I'm happy that you were the one to deliver this doc about Novak because thankfully I just like someone that is able to judge the entire person, but also disagree with someone here and there. I think it makes for the perfect story and the perfect wrap up of what we've seen so far on Novak. Everyone, please go watch this. Novak Djokovic, Wolf in Winter, out Thursday, August 20th on Amazon Prime Video. Jason, congratulations, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much, guys. It was a pleasure. I love this podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.